Welcome to the Myofascial Magic in Action podcast. Hi, Paul. How are you doing?
Joanne, how are you?
I'm good. You're good too. I love it. We've had squid loads of questions, and we always like to talk about things that we've been asked about. And today it's all about prehab and rehab. And in our last episode, we told a story that caused all sorts of comments and emails and goodness knows what, people really excited to learn how we reach into all the modalities, the kind of boot camp styles, the gym work, the personal training, the yoga, the Pilates, asking questions like, oh, am I overdoing it? Am I focusing too much on strength? Am I focusing on too much on stretch? Both of which you and I go, come back to the middle, come back to the middle, come back to the middle, but it's not the middle. And we are always, always, always seeking to give people that 2020 vision of hindsight through our, oh my goodness, very broad experience as manual practitioners who put these things right or help to, part of the, the affiliate medical team sometimes, and the associated therapy teams working with elite athletes and performers, as well as people in everyday life, just seeking to maintain movement. Because we both believe so strongly that longevity is based on being able to move well into your latter years, 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s. In fact, I think my oldest client is over 100 now. So Myofascial Magic in Action is all about prehab, and lots of people don't get what we mean by that. So Paul, what is the key that you seek to honor in the living body when you're working with somebody, particularly the younger athletes that you work with and performers?
I like to look at their own shape.
Yeah.
You look at any animal in the world and watch how it moves naturally.
Yeah.
And then ask myself a question. Why am I trying to take away their natural style of movement and impose an unnatural movement style upon them?
Brilliant question. What we're really saying is, and I have to ask you this, humankind hasn't survived because it had movement lessons as a caveman, and try teaching a leopard or a giraffe how to move. Really? I find that peculiar.
Animals don't exercise. Animals move so that they can thrive, and they play. They play and learn by mimicking their like-minded, like species. They play and they mimic and they practice hunting. They practice interacting. They practice fighting. They practice hugging. They nurture each other into thriving as a species. And I mean, we are amazing. Our humans are fabulous. We have achieved so much, and we will continue to stretch the boundaries of what is possible on this planet and into the universe. However, there are consequences to what we like doing. And we justify doing it because we like doing it. And in our urge and our enthusiasm to do cool stuff, we don't have to bugger ourselves up.
Well, I've got to ask you something, because I've got a lovely fun fact here.
Go on.
We're always talking about different muscle types. We get told to exercise and strengthen type 2 muscle fiber, blah, blah, blah. Now, physiological fun fact, the reason why up until now, or relatively recently, we thought there were 3 types of muscle, type 1, type 2A, type 2B, and they all have different categories, was basically because we only had 3 stains. So 3 stains meant that when you analyze muscle fiber, you only had 3 categories for it. So we've developed all these theories around these 3 categories because there were only 3 stains. Now we have multiple stains. Oh, and all of a sudden we're working out that there's multiple types of muscle fiber expression. And then we're moving into, what's it called? Microscopy, the specialist name for, I don't know why the words escaped me, but never mind. Very refined methods of reading heat change and registers of really subtle changes. And the latest physiology research is actually emerging that muscle fiber types are on a spectrum, from very so-called strong and fixed to very soft and subtle and mobile. So in actual fact, it's the lens through which we see things that has massively influenced how we analyze and do our standard kind of when you're a star, you can manage what is really boot camp, which comes from all the research done on young soldiers decades ago. So really, it just fascinates me when what you say in the light of what's actually occurring, that human beings never had an idea that there were only three muscle types, so they had to exercise them all extraneously and externally impose on them. We've only ever had this incredible spectrum of ability available to us.
It bewilders me that we limit ourselves by what we can research.
Mm,
When the common sense says we know nothing. We only know a small amount about this human thing we call being.
yeah.
However, when we reflect it to where we came from, the environments that we did thrive through, and then we transported ourselves into the 21st century, we get to look at the human body in a very different way because we have the scientific technology now to support our exploration of what we don't know. And we're asking questions that we didn't even know were necessary about the human body
Mm.
and how it performs. However, it's not rocket science to see when somebody's moving terrible. It's not rocket science when you look at somebody and they're in bits and they're working too hard and too inefficiently to be successful in a movement that their own shape says, why? And that's why rehabilitation has become such a monumentally profitable industry because people are forcing themselves because they're being advised to work through it, to transform your shape, to transform your ability, work harder, be more consistent, keep doing it until you can. And this is out of the arc ages when we know now that the body is so distinctly eloquent. It knows what it can do. It knows how to do what it needs to do well if you give it the opportunity in the right environment to be successful and recover itself. It is a self-healing thing. It doesn't require any intervention of anybody unless it receives a serious, significant trauma where we really damage it. Then we need third-party help nowadays to help us. We go to the doctors, we might end up in a cast, we might be immobilized, we'll do rehabilitation. I get that. However, where we came about this, because we're in this world, we're always bringing our hindsight to the table and going, if I can inform you of where you're taking your body, I can tell you where you're going to end up. So let's skirt that experience. Let's avoid that inconvenience that you're bringing and inviting, and let's offer you a variation of movement style, movement intensity, and movement approach. So you maximize your own shape, what its potential is, and we will develop and it will transform into being the best version of yourself without having to suffer the inconvenience of needing any third party interaction from the pharmacy, the rehab, or the surgery for
Oh,
as often as you can.
absolutely. And I think one of the big keys in this is that a lot of us have been trained, I mean, we both were, in biomechanical principles, physiological principles that are just wrong. I'm sorry, they just are. We're taught that muscles contract and relax, not accurate. We're taught that our feelings and senses are all based on our nervous system and neurologically biased, not accurate. I'm not saying they're wrong, they are, but they're wrong because of what we're learning about the fascial matrix and the entire in between, the interstitium, which we talked about in a previous podcast. And the other aspect of it all is that we've become so sports specific, for performance oriented, that it's almost as if we devote ourselves to the protocol and there is really insufficient understanding of the profile trying to reach that goal.
Yep.
And before we even get there, we're talking about prepare yourself so you know yourself and know yourself so you can do it. Or find out that you can't do it. But I think one of the keys, and we've had this discussion in another podcast, where we're talking about, this is just one example of many, but we're talking about grip strength as a way of knowing your longevity. In other words, your biological age will get younger because you're stronger, demonstrated by the parameter measured by grip strength. And all you've got to do is grip one hand and wiggle the other to feel the difference that is. So you keep gripping one hand and you wiggle the other. And when you go to let go, the hand that's gripping actually has to go through a process of ungripping. It's not pretty and it's not pleasant. However, it may well be an asset to do that, but it's not an asset to only do that. Otherwise, as you so famously said in one of our classrooms, you're training the body beautifully to grip a supermarket trolley, supermarket bags, or a Zimmer frame. But you're not allowing it the mobility, the dexterity to eat a meal, to write something down, to gently work with helping somebody. If your grandkid falls down and you want to put a plaster on their knee, you can't do those little things because your hands are literally being trained to harden. Now, if we look at that metaphorically, Paul, how does that translate into the human body? How does that act as a kind of a performance goal that literally undermines its purpose?
Well, it's exactly that, right? You become the shape you dominate it to become. Your body and your bones will transform into the very activities you perform the most frequently, especially if you do it with intensity. You will distort them. It's called morphological change. It will happen. You can't help it. However, you have the option to choose to do it. And you'll notice when people in the gym, they're all shoulders, they're all forward, and they want big shoulders and big chests, and they're told to target this upper body like it's an aesthetically pleasing, but a necessary evil to get strong. And what it does, it creates dysfunctional strength. Now you need rehab. There's no mistake that people are having more shoulder surgeries and more shoulder rehab because people like training harder more frequently now in 2025, coming into 2026. However, nobody says, let's just go to the middle. Everybody says, pull back. Let's make it equally as strong. And it's so aggressive. And it's not like you shouldn't have the ability to do athletic performance or have really athletic power, but you should do it to honor the shape you are and the shape you're capable of becoming without inhibiting your natural blueprint and archetypal architecture. And unfortunately, that's not what's been sold and educated to the masses. We're being told to follow the herd, and everybody must be able to lift, grip, jump, and push at these extremes. And I call that exercising into dysfunction. If you're exercising and you're monitoring it and you're counting it and you're recording it in the essence of goal setting, then you're taking yourself to dysfunction because you will always try to beat those numbers, like sports specific. Whereas animals don't count anything. You won't see an animal with a flipping pedometer on its wrist going, how many steps did it do today? It will just go and do its thing until it's had enough and then stop. And it will recover and it will repair itself. As long as it don't get hurt in a fight, doesn't need more time to be soothed, it will nurture itself and recover and it'll perform again tomorrow. It won't put its trainers on. It won't do a pre-stretch. It won't do a post-stretch. It won't go to the gym and get out its scales and start doing push-ups. It will just be itself. And yet we have monetized and categorized our basic health and longevity of life based on achieving numbers. And yet we are not surrounded by numbers in a human body. That is an academic conformity system. And what we've forgotten the value of awesome movement. Just move in a great way and recognize the strains you're asking yourself to tolerate and perform within, and then manage them in a micromanaged way, like you manage spices in a dish. You put more, and if you want more, you don't put so much in initially, so you taste it and see how it's been taken by the dish
Hello.
to see if it ruins it. And then you add more as necessary and take some away, depending on who you're enjoying the meal with. The same with movement. I do jujitsu, love it. It's one of my, I'm so far in now, I can't walk away, 8 years in. However, every single person I'm with is a different shape, size, and skill set. And I have to accommodate that so I can still perform myself and understand how I become symbiotic with them so that I can still do me without getting inhibited by their skill set. Or we play this game of human chess where we're dancing together. But at no time do we say, let's count. At no time do we measure each other's strength to see who's strongest. We utilize our movement styles and bias and limitations for us and against us. And I find in the exercise world and the rehab world, we've boiled it down to parts and pieces so much, we forgot to be humans. We've now become an experiment doing experimental things in order to heal ourselves in a rehabilitative way.
I love this because one of the things I want to say here is to reiterate what you've just said. We've reduced movement to an intellectual process where we quantify by number. strides per mile, oxygen, VO2 max, all of these measures. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying they're wrong. They're
I
very,
am.
very useful, but they are absolutely not the goal or the purpose of the body moving. And
Yes.
one of the things I love about your work, and let's just be fair, you've been doing karate since you were 7 years old. So jujitsu may be a new martial art, but it's hardly new to you. You're now in your mid 50s, moving towards your 60s. You're on the other side of 55,
Yeah, indeed.
and you are not injured. You move like an angel. And I just love being in partnership with you in the classroom, because we both occupy kind of the yin and the yang of what we're teaching together. I absolutely love it. And I've never known you injured. And yet you match these from 18 to 60 something masters and juniors in jiu-jitsu. And I'm not saying you're not beaten. I've seen you come out
Well,
beaten.
battered.
Oh, absolutely battered. But
Yeah.
the way you recover every single day, Paul, but I take my hats off to you, because it's brilliant. You literally live what you teach.
Because, Joanne, I've seen so many people over the nearly 30 years I've been involved in the industry of rehabilitation. I went, why? The whole reason I got into it is, why do people get hurt exercising? That was
Yeah.
my question to myself.
Mm.
And I just went on a journey of, I'll try and find out. And when I found out, I went, oh my God, we do it on purpose. Well, how do I avoid it? And my own martial arts instructor says, yes, we are trained to injure people. We are trained to inflict pain. But how do you avoid getting hurt? How do you avoid hurting them?
Yeah.
How do you inflict limitation upon somebody so you don't need to hurt them or yourself, so that you restrain their aggression or their irrational behavior? Do that, because one thing's for sure in the martial arts world, if you do martial arts, it's an awful lot more popular now. But back in the 80s and 90s, if you did martial arts on the street, you went to jail, because you really you exceeded what was acceptable. I know many people who kicked somebody in the head because they could and knocked them out on the pavement, and they went to jail for kicking them in the head. That was extreme. Whereas now we're learning how to immobilize people's aggression and overzealous, irrational behavior, because they may be drunk too much, they've had a row, they've had a disagreement, and they weren't able to diffuse it. Well, it's the same in exercise. If we don't know how to diffuse inappropriate strains and activities in our movement style, we become the victim of them.
Yeah.
And our body defends itself against ourselves. That's why things spasm. It's why things become inhibited. It's why your body morphologically changes to protect you from the activities you're doing and limits movement. And that's why it's so important that we don't do prehabilitation. We go way before that, which is why I recover so quickly on purpose, because I've tried to experiment in a way that goes, how much rehab am I required so I can perform tomorrow pain-free? And when I realized I didn't need that much, like you did when you had your breast cancer scenario, right? It was little, but very thoughtful, very meaningful micro movements, but frequently throughout the day. Not large amounts of movement in a short time frame, irregular throughout the day.
No,
So
that would have made it worse, because I would have, we're trained how to work with scar tissue, and generally speaking, the training is pretty aggressive.
yeah,
And we don't do that. We work very, very subtly. We work with undoing the fascial matrix, or preventing it from thinking it needs to bind.
yes,
And I did a little deal with the surgeon who said to me, no cording, no tethering. I don't want to know about any scar tissue or edema. And if you know what you're doing, I'm going to let you go in a day surgery, because I had to have, various scars inflicted. And it was that was really the seed of the birth of MMIA, in that I found out that when I genuinely needed rehab, I could do it in, I think I said 12 minutes a day. Was that the experiment I did? And I thought it would take me 12 months, and it took me 12 weeks to completely transform and restore my movement range with no cording, no tethering, and the scar tissue is hardly there.
we have been very lucky
Yeah.
with our association and our educational journey, and who we've learned from and who we've shared it with.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority of learning and educational schools don't talk about the topic the way we talk about it, or give it any relevance to living tissue. And that is fascia. Now, fascia is so widely recognized now throughout the world that people, of course, are being drawn to its popularity, to popular schools that promote it and explain it in a certain way that is convenient for the listener. But we went a stage further. We have gone with the researchers who research the fascia. We have interpreted the research and made it useful not only to the student, therapist, or movement practitioner, but so that we can share it with an audience of the world so differently. We question everything that's come out there so that rehab is not required, so that we understand how to not insult this incredible fabric that we're all made from and we all interact with. And that's what's so crystal clear to us. Our way is light years away from the classical academic past.
Absolutely. And I just want to use this moment because we've had a few recently criticisms on Instagram, particularly, where somebody wrote about how hard they'd spent the last 5 years working and studying modern science that reveals the layers of the membranes of fascia around muscles, and that there's absolutely no way fascia has anything to do with bone or with skin. And I want to challenge that broadly, roundly, and loudly. And that is this: modern is the operative word, and it's actually inaccurately used in these accusations. Two reasons. Number one, 21st century anatomy, which is what Paul and I have had the privilege to work with. People like John Sharkey, people like Jaap van der Waal, Carla Stecco, Robert Schleip, Jean-Claude Gamberteau, Neil Thies, Professor Darrell Evans, all sorts of professors and researchers. I'm thinking of Professor Glenn Gaudet. There's tens more that you know who you are. We haven't come up with this as a conclusion because we had a day off thinking, oh, let's rewrite the books. We've done enough human dissection ourselves to be able to see that even the work I did for years with Tom Myers has moved on. We are now moving into the 21st century understanding that not one defined membrane in any anatomy book is separate from everywhere else in the body. Now, that actually just almost discards the notion of a membrane, because a membrane is actually a thickening of the same fascial matrix, completely connected by the extracellular matrix that is in a complete continuum with it. And one of the keystones, and I agree with you, the word fascia may not be ideal. One of the keystones is that the fascial matrix is the most ubiquitous tissue in the body, meaning it's everywhere. And everywhere it has unique expressions depending on the internal environment, the external environment, the purpose, and the body's exquisite ability, not just to find homeostasis, which is what we popularly talk about, but to find allostasis. And allostasis is the ability to manage movement and change, movement and change, movement and change, moment to moment to moment to moment to moment, and adapt. And this is one of the keystones of the work that we do, is managing and freeing that adaptability. And if we haven't got adaptability of our thinking process, and we think intellectually that fascia has always been written about as membranes, therefore that's what it is. Well, hang on a minute. Let's look at the biochemistry of bone. The only difference is that it has hydroxyapatite in it. And if you take the hydroxyapatite out, you can take a bone, a femur, I've seen it done, and literally tie it in a knot like a tendon.
I was there when he did it.
Oh my God. So it's like, hang on a second. And I just want to make a flag out here. So to anybody commenting on this, please, please, please manage your comments. I personally aim not to be rude to people, and I would really appreciate it if historic and now out of date comments about so-called modern science, please don't be rude, and please don't imply that Paul and I haven't done our homework, because we wouldn't have the nerve to get online and speak the way we do if we hadn't seen for ourselves the consequences of not understanding the ubiquity of the matrix in the living human body. And one last point here. We have learned anatomy on human bodies as if the being's presence makes no difference. And we can exclude the being from the body while we understand and learn about the body, cut it up into pieces, analyze the parts, and imagine how it goes back together again. We've made it up. That is what's true. And we've been spellbound for centuries by the results of cutting it up into its component parts and making up how they work together, as if levers are a thing in living beings that are animating bodies. There are no levers in nonlinear biologic forms, and every single one of you out there is a nonlinear biologic form. And I've been told several times when I apologize for my passion on this point, not to apologize. So I'm not apologizing, and I am passionate. There is not one single first, second, third, fifth, 900th class lever in your body anywhere at any time. The only time it looks as if there could be is if you are playing shadow puppets on the wall and it looks like your arm moves as a lever, which is a 2-bar open chain that moves in one plane with a pin joint. There's no pin joints in the human body, and there are no 2-bar open chains anywhere ever in any living thing, animal, vegetable, fauna, or mineral. Levers are part of the world of mechanics, which we do not occupy. So having put that to bed, law.
Well, that's a very important point. I love your passion. I'm so proud of that you're standing up and you're waving this flag of 21st century anatomy. And we, of course, welcome conversation and debate in a very respectful way. But understanding why you've just said that, that's very important. I think this is the key to all of this, is if there are no levers in the human body, then why do we keep teaching movement in linearity? And when we know all movement in linearity creates shearing and friction, which is what creates the dysfunction and pathologies that the world is having to manage every single day for the last 100 years plus more on.
Exactly.
So if we can change that understanding of how the human form actually moves and how it organizes itself during movement and movement choices, then we change the need for any rehabilitation at all. We change the frequency of reliance upon it. And we can re-heal and reorganize and resynthesize the very thing we're made of so it can perform optimally every day. And that's what's so important. So enjoy movement. We are designed to do the most incredible things with this incredible thing we are. But don't abuse the shit out of it if you want it to last long. Because you want to enjoy it, not be a spectator of somebody else doing it. You want to be participant in movement, not a spectator watching other people do the things you used to be able to do.
I love it.
Unless you become an excellent and you become elite and you become top of the pile, you get so injured you now become a commentator, a coach, or just a spectator, and you've got so much money you can revel in your successes. Then that's okay.
Paul, I love you. I love you for your passion. And I just want to say one thing to people out there. Don't mock tensegrity.
Understand it.
Please, please don't misunderstand phrases like biotensegrity as if that's the be-all and end-all of the world. It's not. It's a term coined by Dr. Stephen Levin, which actually refers to a different way of seeing biomechanics in many instances and isn't necessarily applied to the living human body. We're talking about something, the best word we can find is living tensegrity because it's in a constant state of flux. However, listen up. If compression wins, you lose, because ultimately it means herniation. Whether that's a disc or a muscle herniation or an inguinal herniation, it starts small and it can just act like a Ziploc bag and open something up that shouldn't be open in the body and cause injury, totally unnecessary. If tension wins and there's so much stretching and lengthening and pausing and waiting for even more length, you disorganize the body's ability to spring back where it belongs. It knows where it belongs. Every single fiber of fascia, which is also a liquid crystal matrix, it's not just fibrous, can respond and restore the way we organize ourselves as embryos, which is based on a spring-loaded reliance on inner restoring. The body has that ability. And we're currently involved in research showing at the micro submolecular basis of how this exquisite ability to manage instability actually manifests in the body. So please don't think we're having idle arguments on Instagram with people up to their neck in out-of-date information. God bless you. The invitation is come and join in with the possibility that there is some really fascinating, useful information coming in, that the sharing of which could transform your ability to enjoy your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and teach for the rest of your life and be one of those brilliant therapists that understands that the living body is whole and complete all the way through its entire life. And with that, and with love, I say thank you. And thank you, Paul, particularly for being a living example of absolutely everything you teach. It's awesome.
God bless all of you. Take care.
Bye.